Hey, it's Jackie. My podcast, The Natural Healing Reel, features guests from all over the world. They're sharing their stories of natural healing modalities. My intention on the show is to aid people with alternative ways in healing, physically, mentally, and emotionally. This podcast recognizes the essential role that mainstream medicine plays in our daily lives, and in no way should this be taken as medical advice. Please seek the advice of a competent medical professional for your care as you see fit, and most importantly, take care. Today, my guest is Jen Harrison, Dr. Jen. And she's a certified Canfield Success Principles Trainer and a success mind coach. She's also an emotional freedom technique practitioner, and EFT is what we normally see. Even further than that, she is a best-selling author and engagement speaker. She is in the healthcare industry for 35 years in development and the study of the mind, body, and healing. Please welcome Dr. Jen Harrison. Welcome to the Natural Healing Reel.
Oh, thanks so much, Jackie. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
I'm so glad that you're here. We're going to talk about mindset and limiting beliefs that we need to overcome. We're going to have solutions that we can get to that aren't complicated like we like to believe that they are. And you're going to explain to us and walk us through all of this. It's kind of the leading edge of healthcare, don't you believe? What you're teaching?
Yes. In some ways it's old, and in some ways it's definitely a new way of looking at things.
I agree. It's ancient, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we've just not, in this era, we have not been taught these methods to tap in and gain access to ourselves or understand how we are energetically connected to this whole universe. You started on this whole healing journey. When did this all, you've been a doctor for 35 years?
For 25 years, but I started off in athletic therapy. My journey actually started I feel like my whole life has kind of led to where I am now. Yeah. Which is sort of the same for everybody. But I remember when I was in grade 5, I wanted to be a teacher. And when I was in grade 9, I wanted to be a psychologist. And then in grade 10, I found out some information about sports therapy. And when I was in grade 11, I had the opportunity to interview an athletic therapist at a nearby university. And that's kind of what got me on the journey. But I actually ended up with a university degree with a psychology major and a zoology minor, where I had a chance to do advanced human anatomy. So I really started off studying the mind and the body as two separate entities. Okay. But then after university, then I moved to Toronto to study athletic therapy. There's a Sheridan College. It's in Oakville, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And at the time, this is back in the mid-'80s, it was the only program of its kind in Canada. And so when I was studying athletic therapy, I got exposed a little bit to sports psychology. So back then it was just starting to come, more into the forefront, looking at how the mind and the body was affecting sports performance, but also healing from injuries as well. And and then
tell us a little bit about that. What was the intrigue there? What were you experiencing that was different and exciting? What were they actually, what was coming forth through that?
Well, I remember at the time there was a sports psychologist at a university in Toronto, at York University, who had done some research with national women's basketball players and using the power of visualization to help them heal from knee surgeries. And it was interesting because what she found was that the athletes who were able to visualize themselves returning to play their sport successfully actually healed better and were able to get back a bit more quickly than those who weren't. And then the flip side that she found with some athletes is that when they were going through the visualization techniques as they were healing from the surgeries, some of them just kept on they couldn't help it. Like when they were visualizing themselves playing, they would then visualize themselves getting injured again. And so that was just sort of a sign that they, their career at that point was probably ended. Yeah. And so that really intrigued me, especially having come from studying the mind and body as two totally like separate entities, and then seeing the power of the connection with that. So that just, it just really drew me. I was very fascinated by that. And then, so I worked full time as an athletic therapist, certified athletic therapist for 6 years. And during that time, I was able to take a lot of osteopathic techniques like craniosacral therapy and myofascial release and visceral manipulation and different techniques that tied in how our emotions affect our body. I mean, it was also looking at things structurally, and biomechanically as well, but especially with the myofascial release and a bit with the craniosacral therapy. How our emotions impact our physical health and well-being. And so when I was able to, and I experienced that myself as well as with my patients. So that just, kind of evolved. And then I decided to, a friend of mine actually, who I'd gone to university with, had kept saying, "Oh, Jen, you should become a chiropractor. Jen, you should become a chiropractor." But I didn't have some of the prerequisites like chemistry and organic chem. So I had to do that before I went back to school. And I had wanted to live, I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I had wanted to live here since I was a teenager. It was just something about the mountains that just spoke to me and then just drew me here. And I just intuitively knew I was supposed to be here. So, And so, and then, it's interesting how things kind of come along, because in 2001, I did training in an energy medicine technique called Body Talk that was actually developed by an Australian chiropractor. But he tied in a lot of like traditional Chinese medicine concepts, energy medicine concepts, mind-body medicine concepts, belief systems, limiting beliefs, consciousness work. And it was interesting because at the time, so this would have been back in 2001, Calgary was kind of the epicenter in Canada for Body Talk at that time. It was a relatively new technique. It was developed in the mid-90s. And so I just ended up being kind of at the right place at the right time for this. And I've been, fascinated with personal development too. So, that's been a big journey of mine, for, like over 3 decades. And so, of course, all the information that I've learned, that I've incorporated into my practice. And then probably a little over 10 years ago, I realized that I have a low volume practice because I like to spend a lot of quality time with my patients. And I realized I really wanted to be reaching more people, especially helping with stress, because I've been studying that for many years too, in terms of how stress impacts our minds, our bodies, or body mind, as I call it, because it's totally interconnected. You can't separate them, can't separate the two. I just realized I wanted to reach a broader audience. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll write a book. And so I started writing a book, but then I realized I was going to need a website to launch it eventually. And so 10 years ago, I started my website, and things have just it's gone through many incarnations, as many online businesses do. So then it's just eventually evolved into doing coaching. So I had the opportunity actually to write a chapter for one of Jack Canfield's books. He was the author, that people don't know, the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, but also a co-author of another New York Times bestseller called The Success Principles. So I had an opportunity to write a chapter in one of his best-selling books called The Soul of Success, Volume 1. And then I did training with him to become a certified Canfield trainer. And then I did some additional training to be a success coach. And then, emotional freedom techniques came into my awareness as well. And so I did training to be, and I've continued to do training as a certified practitioner. And I'm not able to use that in my chiropractic practice. As I said, I have a part-time practice, but it's the key tool actually that I use with my mindset coaching clients. And we can talk about that a little bit more later too.
I actually was introduced to that. I had one of my daughters, she was born 3 months early. And so she had spastic diplegia. And so, of course, I went through all the different, and that was brought forth to me. And I did take her and I got the book and all that, but I haven't looked at that for so long, but I know it's very powerful and it works. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what I love I love so many things about EFT, but also there's been some really amazing research. I mean, there's well over 150 studies that have been published in peer-reviewed journals in English alone. And then I recently heard that there's, somebody did a literature search, and there's like over 90 EFT studies that have been published in other languages as well. So it's very well documented. There's some really great people. Like there's a Dr. Dawson Church, who's one of the top researchers, and I had a chance to do some training with him as well. There's a Dr. Peter Stapleton at Bond University, who's done a lot of really great, amazing research. But she's focused a lot on eating disorders, and has done a lot of research on that. But she's done other research as well. And so, yeah, there's just some really great quality people doing some really key quality research. So.
How great for you that you're in the mix of those people. Good, right? So you're an equal to these people. So good on you.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm an equal with these people, but it's certainly wonderful to be, to know of them and just appreciate their work so much. And then there's another organization called the Tapping Solution that was created by three siblings, Nick and Jessica and Alex Ortner. And they do just wonderful, fabulous work with EFT, and they raise a lot of money through their business, but they set aside a lot of money from their business for research, because research is very expensive. And I mean, getting government grants for, techniques that may be considered kind of fringe, even though they're not, can be really challenging. So there's just been some really wonderful energy, circulating in that world.
Do you know what? I'm just realizing that there's some people that have never heard of EFT. And so why don't we explain what that is?
Yeah. So it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, because there's actually a myriad of techniques that fall under that umbrella. And it's considered an energy psychology technique. And the energy portion comes from actually traditional Chinese medicine, because it involves tapping over a specific set of acupressure points on the head and upper body while verbally stating what's bothering you. And so it's just such an amazing technique, because it can help a myriad of problems, from just like day-to-day stress to there's wonderful couple studies that have been done showing it effective in clearing PTSD. And so, I mean, PTSD is just such a challenging condition. And so, there was a study done a number of years ago with U.S. war veterans, some from more recent, from Afghanistan, but some even from the Vietnam War. And they did 1 hour sessions once a week with them for 6 weeks. And they also showed them how they could use one of the EFT. It's so the emotional freedom techniques, or EFT. Sometimes it's just called tapping. Techniques that they could do as self-care, in the meantime. But what they found is that after the 6 weeks, the majority, I think it was like around 86%, no longer met the PTSD criteria. Wow. And that was also similar when they did 6-month follow-up as well. So, I mean, that's unheard of, right? That's
so what do you
unheard
think,
of.
What is happening there that is creating that? It's just releasing the energy blocks?
It's a combination of things. And so a lot of the research has been focused on what it can help with. But now there's more research is being focused on what's the actual mechanism of that? So basically what's happening is by tapping the specific set of acupressure points, it helps to send a calming signal to your nervous system. And so that helps to then put you in a safer place, so that the emotion of the issue that you're dealing with, and I mean, it could be anything from just, fear of public speaking, or, maybe you're going through relationship challenges or parenting challenges, all the way to having experienced major emotional, physical trauma. It just helps to release the intensity of the emotional connection with that, so that because by tapping on it, you're basically calming your nervous system down. And so that takes you out of that fight or flight mode, so that then you can look at the event and you'll still have the memory of the event, but it won't feel like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah, that's huge, right?
Yeah. And so if
pull
you're
my book back out.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're dealing with just the day-to-day stressors of things, because I mean, we all like the world is crazy right now. Plus, our lives get as busy as we allow our lives to, to be busy. So if you're dealing with those types of level of things, then EFT is great as a self-care tool. I've created a bunch of EFT tapping meditations on my website that people can check out to help with like fear, anxiety, overwhelm. Fear of public speaking, needing motivation to exercise, those types of things. But if you're dealing with, major like childhood trauma, even though there's like we talk about little t trauma and then big T trauma. So if you're dealing with any of those, then I really encourage you to work with like a certified practitioner. And there's some psychologists who are certified practitioners. So I'm trained, and I have actually helped a lot of people work through some pretty serious like childhood trauma. But I know that I have some people who it'll just work out better for them to work with a psychologist too, especially if they haven't worked with one before. So I found a gal actually near where I live. So I've referred quite a few people to her. Yeah, because, as I said, I'm trained to do it as part of my coaching. But if there's other bigger things, then I'll often refer people. So there are psychologists out there who are trained in EFT and other modalities as well. But I find it really interesting that there's been a shift in psychology towards more somatic therapies, like working with the mind and the body and recognizing that the emotions do get trapped physically in the body. And because I find it interesting, that shift now, because back in the early 90s, when I was studying myofascial release and myofascial unwinding, like we knew about that already. And there's even techniques called somato-emotional release that worked with, working on the body to then get to the emotions and people being able to have a release that way. So I'm very pleased that there's getting to be more and more of a shift.
Yeah.
And to appreciate
that it's generational. Some of this stuff's coming through, and it's in the cell, it's cellular. And so it's just being passed down and through generation to generation until we become aware of what that underlying core is, right?
Yeah.
Doing this work. And sometimes, do you think that everybody knows that they had a childhood trauma? Because some people have this perfect upbringing and they're going through as much as myself. And I'm going, okay, well, this happened to me. Well, they had the perfect upbringing and the perfect parents, and they were an A student, and they did everything by the book, but they're dealing with the same. It was interesting because it was also a doctor that I did a course with. She lived in New Zealand, but it was a mind, body, soul year-long coaching course. And I was blown away by that, because we don't think that is a thing. We think, well, they've got it all going on, right? Everything's perfect there. But what she explained to me was the fact that as a child, that if she didn't have that 100%, she wasn't getting, and so she was grinding and beating herself all of those years we're all trying to get that attention or that praise from our parents, right? But you wouldn't even think that it would come in a situation like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I grew up in a happy home, and mom and dad like genuinely loved each other. It's not that they didn't have their issues, but they never argued in front of us. So I was in my mid-30s before I started learning conflict resolution skills, because I thought that if you had an argument with someone, like that was the end, like whether it was a friendship or a love relationship or, so you can grow up in a healthy.
I think that's a common thing, don't you? I think that's a societal, unspoken thought, like that. I think that's a common thought that's not even really talked about. Right?
Yeah.
It's healthy to have a conversation, and sometimes it gets heated, but you're speaking your truth. And sometimes because we're not really great at it and there's not a lot of conversation around it, we don't do it very well.
No. And, we learn most of those skills from our parents or from, grandparents or, people who are modeling that to us. And then unless you actively seek out new tools and skills, then it's easy to hold on to that belief going, oh yeah, no, I can't rock the boat. And, it's not polite. I think it's different too. I mean, for my generation, to like 20 and 30-year-olds now, there's a difference there, but and part of it too, it comes down to mindset and belief systems. We seem to think that, oh yes, they've got it all figured out, or they've got it all figured out. And one thing that's been so liberating for me, and what Brene Brown probably was the one who really started this shift, not only for herself and a lot of people, but a lot of like people in the leadership, like top leadership, people who are top in their field, in the leadership field, who are very open about, like Jack Canfield, who was in The Secret, and he's, Mr. Manifesting, and, Success Trainer, Success Principles, and has sold like, 500 million copies of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. But, like he came from, his mom was an alcoholic, and he's had a son, I think, with drug and alcohol addictions. And and so I love that song by Alanis Morissette that one of the lyrics goes, what it all boils down to, my friends, is that nobody has it all figured out just yet. And so you look at people like Oprah, or you look at people, business leaders like Marie Forleo, or, Gabby Bernstein, or like all these people have had all sorts of different things. So to me, that was very liberating when I found out, oh, I don't have to be perfect, because I grew up, I feel like I'm 38, but I'm really 58. So my brain gets kind of mixed up. I
was just talking about that yesterday. It's the consciousness, right? We're the same, right? We're just
yeah. So like I grew up in an era where, like if your T's weren't crossed and your I's weren't dotted, and if your spelling and punctuation were absolutely perfect, like you lost marks for that. And so that mindset, carries through, that everything's got to be perfect. And so that's a limiting belief that can hold us back from, starting a new business, or doing podcasts, or, doing public speaking, or, different things. It's just like, oh, like I have to have it all figured out. Well, no, you don't. And I mean, I still struggle with that, but that's been a liberating thing for me, is to realize, nobody has it figured out. It doesn't matter if they had the perfect childhood. It doesn't matter if they had like the most wretched childhood possible. It's what you do with your wounds, and it's what you choose to create in your life too.
Well, and I think that while you're touching on that, being a right brain girl, the left brain, my sister, she graduated when she was 16. She was on the dean's list of engineering. She was doing everybody's papers for them for money on the side, right? Everybody got that left brain thing, but me. And I was the youngest and kind of the last forgotten fifth child, right? But I still, to this day, I have the dyslexia. I've passed it down to my children. So the punctuation, the spelling, it's not a natural thing for me. And it's still it gets in my way. And over the years, I've learned that that we're not all meant to be that. I mean, society put this into what the box is and what you have to do to get into the box. But some of us don't fit in that box. We're on the circle over here. And that took me a long time, because I grew up thinking I was stupid. I didn't do well in school until I hit hairdressing. And then the whole science of that, oh my goodness, I couldn't spell, but I'll tell you what, I could spell trichoptilosis and like every disease there. I just was fascinated. And I've carried on with, all the, the body and the mind and the universe. And it's, you just have to find your thing, your passion, right? And thankfully, I was able to drop into something that was in my gateway to be successful, But to date, here I am. I know I have, one of my sisters told me that she would never even date somebody if they couldn't spell something properly. I was totally offended. We had a big fight about it, clearly. Because, it's not by choice when somebody has, I don't know, but it's definitely a great thing that we get to learn, and that information is out there, that we're not less than somebody because they spell better than we do, right? Like I can be successful and
I'm just maybe more on the creative end, right? Whereas the left brain is very structured and very, they're the brains of the school, is what I've always felt.
Well, and if you had that repeatedly kind of pounded into you that, oh, you're stupid because you can't, spell correctly, that has nothing to do with intelligence. That has nothing to do with learning. But when I grew up, it was just there were the smart kids and then there were the dumb kids. Yep. And, that was sort of quasi pre-dyslexia, diagnoses. Yeah. And, I grew up in a small town, so the resources were really limited.
Well, there's no real great resources to really address, I think, unless you're I don't know, I'm still going through it with my 5 children on a span. Every 9 years I had another. So there's that.
Yeah. And so that ties in with limiting beliefs that were thrown onto you that you've had to work through. And then you were able to show yourself once you got into hairstyling. It was just oh my gosh, this is my jam. And I love this stuff.
Myself, I am not, oh my God, I'm not stupid. I remember in grade 10 having those thoughts. How sad is that? Right?
Heartbreaking.
Society thing. It is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because it's still going on and it's probably more so now than ever, that deep ingrained pattern of society and who gets to be successcul and who doesn't really,
Yeah.
Anyway, I think things are the awareness that we all are having now is creating we're creating a different paradigm now, I believe.
Yeah. And I think that because we've got access to multimedia, right? It's not just about reading to learn. We can listen to learn. There's podcasts, there's YouTube, and podcasts that stem from that. There's audiobooks. There's all sorts of different methods of learning now. And I think there is a deeper appreciation that everybody learns differently. For the longest time, I always thought of myself as being more of a visual learner, but over time I came to realize, no, I'm actually a kinesthetic learner. And so needing to actually physically do something to help learn. And there's actually research shows that the majority of people are that way. They'll retain information about what they hear, but they'll retain way more information if they're actually physically doing that. I taught anatomy and physiology at a massage therapy college for a number of years. And I remember in the part where we were learning about how the muscle contracts. And so there's all these, there's the calcium, ions and the troponin and tropomyosin and the nerve, all these technical things, right? And it can be quite confusing because there's a lot of, detailed information there. And so it just popped into my head. It's just let's act this out, physically act this out. So I had people be the muscle fibers. Somebody was the nerve. Somebody was the, molecules that had to move so that the muscle fibers could slide over each other. And this is a number of years ago. And the class was quite close. And so when these muscle fibers were getting closer together, it was 2 people, they were hugging and we had a lot of fun with it. And I just did it on a whim. I just thought, well, this will just be a different way of teaching it. And just to help people. Well, what really blew me away was at the end of the year when we were doing preparation for the final exam. This was a second year class. Everybody remembered that whole process. Everybody remembered who played which role in it too, because some people were watching, and then because there was maybe 6 people out of 20 or whatever who were actually actively engaged in that. So that's another thing too, is just learning how you learn best too. And that just comes with trial and error.
I always, for myself, if I drive there, I can get there no problem the next time. If I can see it, then I can, but when somebody sometimes is just talking, I'm like, I need actually the visual as well to really understand what we're talking about if I'm learning something new. And I think that I totally agree with what you're saying. That would be so impactful for probably many of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And ideally, we really should be nurtured and taught how to use both right and left brain. And I was so blessed. One of my clinicians at Chiropractic College, I had actually met him a number of years earlier when I was taking an osteopathic technique course in visceral manipulation, and he had been one of the teaching assistants. And then just wonderful synchronicity, he ended up when I this was before I went to chiropractic college, and then when I went to chiropractic college, it just turned out that he was one of my clinicians. Like, we were divided into groups, but he was wonderful because he really taught us, because the chiropractic college I went to in Toronto is very academic focused. I mean, you've got to have 3 studies from peer-reviewed journals to support your diagnosis and your treatment plan. And it was very, 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 very left-brained. But he really encouraged us. He sort of had a handful of us under his wing who we knew, were intuitive and had an appreciation for that, and appreciation for mind-body connection. But he really encouraged us to also trust our intuition as well, and to really integrate the two. And that was just such a gift. I probably would have gotten there eventually myself anyway, but to have a wonderful mentor like that, who was like brilliant. I mean, he knew a bajillion different, techniques, and he'd also knew a lot of osteopathic techniques as well, and integrated a lot in. But to have that, left and right brain integration, that's really, if you're able to do that with the whole brain. And, from what you shared with me, when you discovered hairstyling, that's actually what happened with you, right? Because I mean, if you're memorizing different chemicals and different products and what products to use when on which type of hair and whatever,
I'm
that's
not sure what happened
stuff.
With me. All of a sudden, there was a light bulb went on though, and I was for it. I just found a drive, and every test I wrote, I got 98, 100% on. Seriously, every single one. It was ridiculous. I just loved that class.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it took up most of my high school. So
yeah.
But I love this information that you're sharing. You were talking about the limiting beliefs. Do you want to go back and touch on that? How our thoughts are really powerful and we're getting in our own way.
Yeah. Yes, I would love to talk about that. So in terms of, some people might be going, well, what's a limiting belief? Well, belief is basically just a repetitive thought that we've told ourselves over and over and over and over and over again until we believe it to be true. And a lot of the limiting beliefs that we have were imparted to us, by our parents, by our siblings, by teachers, by maybe, leaders in faith communities, when we were young and growing up. And they get into our subconscious mind. And a lot of times they're running in the background. It's like the operating system on your computer. When you're checking for email or you're, typing up a Word doc or doing a PowerPoint, you're not thinking about the operating system of your computer, right? You're not thinking about, Microsoft, or you're not thinking about, like Apple, operating system, whatever. So that's how it is with the limiting beliefs. A lot of the times is that it's running the bus, it's driving the bus, and we're not necessarily consciously aware of that. And so some examples of limiting beliefs would be, I'm not smart enough. I don't, I can't read. I can't, or, I'm not a good reader. I'm not a good speller. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. I don't have enough money. Oh, if I earn a lot of money, my family and friends will resent me. Or I have to do it all, or it won't get done properly.
Mm-hmm. There's so many, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could go on.
Yeah.
So, and everybody's
they're rattling around in our computer chip.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, unless we start kind of delving into that, or working with someone like through coaching, then oftentimes, they keep in the subconscious mind. But once we can bring them to light and shed some light on them, that's where then, there's a lot of different approaches that you can take to help clear them out. And so
and this is really, really important. I've now found out in my lifetime, because I think we think that we've cleared stuff, or we think we've addressed, but they say that like what you're saying, that 0 to when we're at home, when we're a little child.
Yes, kind of 0 to 8. Yeah.
And whatever's going on in our family, we take then as our foundation of our beliefs. And we don't even know what those beliefs are. We're hearing things, like you said, right, over and over. And then all of a sudden we believe that to be a truth. And then we've not checked back in to see what our beliefs even are. where did we get that from? And does that still, I've been working through and sifting through these, whatever, 50 to 80,000 thoughts we're having a day. Yeah. It's quite disturbing at first. And then as you start, as I started to re-perceive and find those little golden nuggets that I had buried down deep, it's not really that scary. For some reason, I don't know, it's funny, we think that we don't want anyone to know or whatever it is, but it's all just blah, blah, blah. It's not even truth. It's just junk that's trashing around in there. Just cycle it around.
Yeah. I want to touch upon a couple of things that you said in terms of sometimes thinking like you've cleared something out and then it pops up again. Oftentimes what will happen is that when we're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone or we're taking ourselves to a new level, that's when you're going to get ego resistance. That's when the limiting beliefs are really going to come. And you might have a limiting belief that you think, oh, I thought I cleared that out like 2 years ago when I did, like counseling, or I did EFT, or I went to that workshop, or I did that yoga retreat, or, I thought I cleared that out. Well, it'll just be another facet of that problem. There's an expression called new level, new devil. Or sometimes it can be a new level, old devil, in terms of, you're going to the taking yourself to the next level. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's that limiting belief that.
I love that. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's just classic. I have to take that with me.
Yeah. Well, the new level, old devil, I got that from Denise Duffield Thomas, who is a money mindset mentor. And I can't remember who did the phrase, new level, new devil, but there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a new challenge. And so what I often share with actually, I'm just going to circle back a little bit. When I was in my late 30s, I thought, once I turn 40, I'm going to have it all figured out. I've got all these great tools, that I knew at the time. It's just like, any challenges, like bring it on, because I'm going to be able to work through it like really easily. Well, guess what? That's not how it works. And so then I came up with the analogy for my coaching clients and for my patients too, is that, once you've mastered grade 5 math, there's no point in repeating that over and over again, right? You go to the next level and the new challenges of, figuring out and solving, math problems, and then, or, whatever analogy you want to use with that. So whenever we go to the next level, there's going to be new challenges, but that's why we're here. That's my belief, is that's why we're here on planet Earth, is to, is to work through things, go on the journey. There's going to be new challenges, but then as we're able to figure things out or work through things, then we're able to help people on the journey too. Right? We can share our experience. We can share the tools that we've learned. We can share the books that we've read and experiences that we've had to help other people along the way. And I that's my personal spiritual philosophy.
I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
We have the belief that we're struggling, that we've done something bad. And I actually was doing that to myself unconsciously, right? Beating myself up because I should have done better. I should have known better. I knew better than that. This kind of talk is rattling around in my head. And when we're broadcasting that, then we're getting more of that back, universal law. And, I think the biggest thing is just not being aware of what's going on inside, where all of us are out here looking at everything out here, right? Instead of learning how to tap in.
Yeah. I can't remember where I learned this. I learned it about 20 years ago, but excuse me, it's just a really powerful question when I'm faced with a challenge. And I just ask myself, what's the life lesson I need to learn from this? Do I need more tools? Is there a repeated pattern that's happening here? And once you start asking yourself those questions, that's when you can shed the light. That's when you can excavate the limiting beliefs that have been running in the background and going, oh, I'm having challenges with this coworker, but she really reminds me, excuse me, of another coworker I had 10 years ago who really reminds me of my sister, who really reminded me, so you can see, of an ex-boyfriend or, whatever, or an ex-spouse or partner, whatever. And so it's asking yourself those types of questions that then can then help to uncover. And once you uncover and shed the light on it, then it's just a matter of going, okay, so what tools do I need to use to help with this? Who do I need to work with to help me with this? And once you start asking those questions, the universe will provide, you'll be in the bookstore and a book will fall off the shelf, or, a certain title will really catch your attention and it'll be like, oh, or, a podcast will pop up, or something on YouTube will pop up, and it's like, oh, that's the information exactly that I needed.
Totally. Don't you love that? I love that stuff when that happens.
Oh, synchronicity. I'm a huge fan.
So much fun. But I think you're bringing up an amazing point, and that is questions. I was asking the wrong questions. And I think that's another awareness. Like, what did I do? Like, I must have, who did I screw over? These kinds of questions, right? They're sarcastic. They're but those are the questions that are not bringing us any answers or any growth forward, right? That's
right.
What I thought for myself.
Yeah.
Right? I needed to ask, the powerful questions that are going to bring me some kind of answers so I can get unraveling or moving. But I was stuck because I didn't have that information, even though I have been delving in this stuff since I was as long as I remember, grew up in it and having all that knowledge and, but there's something about, and Dr. Joe Dispenza says it, right? It's not enough to know, you need to know how.
How. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of us, so all of that knowledge, a lot of times we don't know how to implement it. We don't know how to live the knowledge. We know it, we understand it, we can see that what other people are doing, but we don't know, right? And so what you're doing and how you're coaching and your teaching and your techniques, this is what people need to learn. This is what people need to understand, because this is going to help them.
And there's not going to be just one solution.
No, there's
right?
lots. There's so many for everybody, right? Like and there's different authors and people and doctors, and some are great and some kind of resonate, and then other ones are like boom, you're right.
Yeah. And things will come to you at the right time if you keep asking and if you keep searching. And it may take longer than you want it to, but it will eventually come to you. I mean, even with emotional freedom techniques, like I first learned about that through Jack Canfield. He co-wrote a book called Tapping into Ultimate Success with a woman, Pamela Bruner. And when I first, and it came with a DVD, and so this was in 2012, so it's a number of years ago. I'd watched that. I read the first few chapters, and it just didn't resonate with me. And I also, I thought, oh, this isn't as good as body talk, because they're just like diving right in, as opposed to body talk. You do some special muscle testing to figure out what is the priority, as opposed to just guessing what the priority is, or, so anyway, that was my mindset. So I had the book. I have a little bookcase beside my bed. And so it was just a book with some other books that were like on the bottom shelf for 4 years. And one night before I was going to bed, I just intuitively thought, oh, I just need to pick one of those books. And I leaned over and I couldn't even see the spine of the book. I couldn't even see the title of it. And so I didn't even know what it was, but it was just, that was the book I needed. And so I pulled out the exact same book again, and then hook, line, and sinker, got certified. I've done lots of training, like 75 hours of training or something.
And we're ready now.
Yeah. And, I'm using it all the time for myself and, with my coaching clients and with friends and
that's a
members.
really great message that you just shared there, right? Because sometimes we're just not ready.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes when we're sharing something to somebody, they're going, and they're looking, they're just not there yet,
Yeah.
So just live it and let them come to you.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, however that appears. But it's a journey, and it continues to be a journey. And as you go through different challenges, then different limiting beliefs are gonna come up. And I think a key thing for me, I know in just like releasing limiting beliefs that have been holding me back, is you think that you've cleared it. But then there'll still be another strand that'll be there. There'll be another, childhood memory of something that somebody said just off the cuff. It doesn't have to be anything like horrible, but just something that like just kind of stuck in your head. There's always but the good thing is that, when something else on of an aspect of an issue comes up, it's just like, oh, like from an EFT perspective, it's like, that's a tappable issue. I can tap on that. And then there may be other, techniques that will, pop up that I can use on it too. So there's always going to be limiting beliefs that come up.
So going back to what you were talking about with Renee Brown, the guilting and the shaming that is going on within that subconscious mind, that is just so huge, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's multiple layers to that, because part of that can be limiting beliefs that were imposed on us, by teachers or family or, other people when, in that 0 to 8 or, beyond range. But then in terms of our negative self-talk and telling us like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why didn't I figure that out? I shoulda, coulda, woulda, negative self-talk that we all have, like everybody on the planet has, is just that's part of our ego resistance, trying to protect us, because ultimately we all want to be safe. I mean, that's just part of, I can't remember where it is on Abraham Maslow's scale of like hierarchy, but I mean, being safe, being part of a tribe, belonging, like those are foundational key things to human body, mind, health, and well-being, like wherever you are. And so when we're taking ourselves to a new level or we've got a new challenge, it's going to be, oh, where's the safest place to be? Oh, it's the old place. It's basically 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old you who's saying, oh, Jackie, I got to keep you safe. So yeah, let's not have you, let go of this limiting belief and have you go forward into the world, and share more of your gifts. Ooh, that's too dangerous, because then you're going to be, potentially exposing yourself to criticism, or just as an example. And so, so just being able to recognize that fear that comes up and take a step back and go, okay, where's this fear? And just ask yourself, like, where's this fear really coming from? Oh, this is just my ego again, just trying to keep me safe. And so, like, I know I can be really hard on myself. I'm a quasi recovering perfectionist in some things. And so, just being able to take a step back and just give yourself some compassion, or just even visualize, like go through a visualization of having a conversation with 8-year-old you and comforting them as a child, the way that you would, a child, a niece or a nephew, or your own children, or, grandchildren or whatever. And just go, yeah, you know what? It's okay. It's safe for us to move forward. And in fact, it's not safe for us to stay where we are.
It's huge. What you're talking about is huge. And I've done this technique many times, and it's so powerful, because it was our little girl or little boy that received all of these core fears or insecurities or not enoughness or whatever it is that we're all different that we're holding. Usually everybody has this. Do you believe that? Yeah, it's like a society thing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, everybody. And that's what I like to share with people too, is that like all the top people in leadership, all the Hollywood stars, if you had listened to enough interviews, Olympic athletes, if you listen to, interviews, they all have self-doubt. Everybody, every human being on the planet, is what you do with it. Dr. Susan Jeffers wrote that wonderful book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Well, I have felt the fear and done it anyway. And it was walking through to do this podcast. It was a dark night of the soul. I signed up to do this. And this is not in my, in my makeup. So, and walking through fear. Okay, now post this video all over. I was like, no, we're all like, no, but it was moving so fast. You didn't have a chance you had to just do it. And then it was quite exhilarating, because, okay, so what happened? Are you alive still? You're still standing. Okay, keep going, right? And it's such a walking through fear of past beliefs what are we worried about? What people are going to say is what we think, right? Well, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Who cares? They're going to think and say it anyway. What is that saying? What is that? My new favorite saying is, it's not your business what they think of you.
That's right. Yeah.
Good one, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that one too. Yeah. Because you could, you could be Mother Teresa, and there were people who criticized Mother Teresa. There's people, who are doing like wonderful things, and, generating lots of revenue, but giving lots of revenue, to charities and to different foundations and helping a lot of people in the world. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get criticized by somebody. And so once you know that that's just normal, I know I was listening to a podcast, a couple of podcasts, I've heard people say that, like when you put your book out there, like on Amazon, and like the first negative review you get, celebrate, because it means you've made it. Somebody's criticizing your work, as opposed to,
as opposed to nobody's paying attention.
As opposed to nobody's paying attention, or just going, oh my gosh, that's a horrible thing. I'll never write another word, like for as long as I live, so.
Yeah. And we do live in a universe of polarities, contrast.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So you have to just expect that coming in. Not everybody likes you, and who cares, right?
Yeah. And so
you don't like everybody either. So there's that, right? Like it just, just rise above it.
Yeah. And it just popped into my head, a limiting belief when I was working as an athletic therapist. I thought that if my patients weren't getting better, it was somehow my fault. What was I doing wrong? What do I like? I must be doing something wrong because they're not getting better. And it was a really valuable life lesson for me to learn and figure out, going, oh, wait a minute. I'm seeing them 3 times a week, but what are they doing the rest of the time when they're not here? Are they sitting on the couch, drinking beer and eating cheeseburgers and not doing their home program or stretches, or, letting themselves get super stressed out, or, so learning that my job was to help people to help themselves to heal. That was just really liberating for me, because that allowed me to work through that limiting belief that it was somehow my fault if they weren't healing.
And if left alone, it would become your fault.
Pardon me?
If left unaddressed, if you had kind of looked at that to kind of go, okay, this isn't feeling good. What is this about? And worked through that, then somehow it would have become your fault. So, right? Like we get this self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So just being able to, so there's an example of a limiting belief that I had to work through that was very, very liberating. And it doesn't mean that I don't, care about, my coaching clients, or don't care about my patients. Of course I do. I try and do everything that I possibly can. But I've learned to just kind of let go, that if they're not healing, and because they're not taking care, they're not taking ownership for their end of the, of the healing, and, improving their health or recovering from an injury. That's not my responsibility. And it's the same with the work that you do and the work that I do. There'll be people who will be listening to this message today and go, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And there'll be other people going, okay, who are those 2 gals? Like, they're nut bars. Click, scroll.
Totally, right? But if there's one person that listens to this podcast today and gets something out of it, that's all that matters to me, because you know what? Our job is done today, because that's what happened to me. And that helped me to carry on and continue to push through and make it through the, getting up off the floor and getting back up off the floor.
Yeah.
And it was, it was a podcast. It was Dr. Joe Dispenza and Brian Rose from London Real. And
yes,
I don't know what I even signed up for that night. I was that, numb. And so that is my passion, and my mission is to just share the wealth of knowledge from people around the world. My God, there's incredible things going on. Like, listen to all the things that you are gifted to share to help people heal. Like, that's a lot of things that you are educated in, not just the chiropractic, not just, the athletic
therapy. Yeah.
Therapy. Thank you. But I mean, it's just like your EFT, it's just on and on and on. Right. And it's just such a gift. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Jackie, for saying that. I'm a lifelong learner. And as I said, I really feel that that's our purpose in life, is to learn and grow, and then share and help others along the way in whatever way we can, because, other people have done that for me and like for us along the way too. So I just feel that that's part of our divine life.
It's a different paradigm though, as well, don't you think? Because we've been living in something where you need to step on top of somebody because there's one winner, right? And so this is so refreshing and so it's just, this work is so amazing because everybody wins, right?
Yes. Yeah. 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 That whole competitive model as opposed to partnership model. There's just, the partnership model is just, it's where it's at. It really is. And
I'm with you. So have we missed anything that you wanted to share today?
I think I think one more thing I just wanted to share, that just a limiting belief that I think can hold us back, is that it's never too late to start something new. It's never too late to make some major changes in your life. I just read a news article a couple of weeks ago about an 87-year-old woman here in Calgary, who's been running a successful tech business for years and just started a new one. And so to me, that's really inspiring, because I've a limiting belief I've had to kind of work with a bit is that a lot of friends my age or a few years older are all focused on retirement. Well, I love speaking, I love writing, I love, coaching, I love all these things. So I have no plans to retire. I've never had any plans to retire, actually, even when I was younger. So anyway, this part of me thinks, oh my gosh, like I'm running out of time to really, grow my business more. I'm really, and so then I have to take a step back and go, Jen, let's have a conversation. And it doesn't matter
coming into your time, I think.
Yeah,
Dr.
and it doesn't.
Harrison, this is. I mean, you've been working at this a long time, but you're going to be one of these big leaders of this whole movement, because society's shifting. Everybody is going to be looking for this work because the energies of the universe are the fastest they've ever been, and people are stressed, and people need tools, and they are going to start having to seek them, like myself. You get into a place where the pileup gets too big, and the other stuff is working.
Well, something I share with share on social media and share with my clients is that if you're a human being living on planet Earth, stress is inevitable, but burnout is optional. And in this day and age, it's like what Dr. Joe Dispenza says too, like, you need to know how, and there's no reason why you can't know how. All you have to do is just walk through the self-help section in your library or your bookstore, and then look up those people on YouTube or in podcasts, and and that'll just open up a whole new world. I was doing a first aid recertification course a few months ago, and it was a very small group, and one of the people there, she was a young gal, mid 20s, I think, who had just graduated as a natural health care practitioner, but she was having a hard time because a lot of her friends had been really struggling, like through COVID, with mental health issues and with stress. And the way that they were dealing with it was basically like illicit drugs and video gaming on the weekends. But in the same breath, then she's saying and complaining how, like, people her age, is just so expensive to see a psychologist. Like, that could be like, $175 or $200 just for one session. And so I only had a small window of opportunity, and I said, you know what, if you go on YouTube and just Google guided meditation, I said, you'll come up with a million options. I shared, my website with her, but I didn't take it to the next level and go, well, how much money are your friends spending on illicit drugs and online video games that could be put towards, counseling, even though they don't have insurance?
Feeling themselves and feeling good about themselves. We talked about this, and thank you. I was just going to ask you a question to interject into that, because this is a big topic. A lot of people, because these newer techniques that we're talking about aren't covered under healthcare, right? And people don't know about it because they're not covered. So they just it's the first thing to kind of not be explored with their finances, right? What do you say to people that, besides sharing that there's all the websites and the free material on each website, is it's just that, it's that they need to reevaluate what, I guess you can't really say that to people, but really that's what needs to happen there, I think.
Yeah, I think, but part of me, my inside voice is just like, come on, there's a whole bunch of options here for you, like, get with the program. But my gentle outside voice just actually tries to help them reframe it. And I'm kind of joking when I say that, because I mean, I talk to myself that way too, just like, come on, get with the program. But really, we all have blind spots, myself included, where we need to have things reframed. And so it's like, well, if you're feeling really stressed, like, have you gone onto YouTube and just done a search for guided meditation and just like picked one? And things snowball, right? You find one person and, they're interviewed by someone who does a lot of like really wonderful interviews. Like I was looking at your YouTube channel and, oh my gosh, you've interviewed like so many wonderful people on a variety of topics. So, I mean, just like check out Jackie's podcast, check out her YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch of resources there. And as I said, go to the self-help section, in your local bookstore, and, just see what, look at a few books and see what resonates with you. Write down the names of the authors, and then, that's what I do is be like, oh, that person's kind of interesting. And so then I'll see, search for them on YouTube or on podcasts and get to know them and their message a bit more. And if it resonates, great. And if it doesn't, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And so it's just taking that step. We had talked a little bit before we came on air that solutions don't have to be complicated. We think they have to be complicated. We think we have to, get a counselor, and we think we have to ingest the right vitamins and the right minerals and the supplements. And don't get me wrong, there's all that is very valuable. But in terms of taking the first step, it can be really simple. And you don't have to figure out all at once. Just take that initial step.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
It was so great to meet you, Dr. Jen Harrison.
Thank you, Jackie. So nice.
Canada, where I was born and raised.
Yeah. I'll wait to your hometown for you.
Do it. And I look forward to talking to you in the future. Do you have any other books in the works that are coming along?
Yes, I do.
Best-selling author?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of content. It's about organizing it into the book that takes the time. But I do have a book that I'm hoping to be out later this year called Stress Self to Best Self, 7-Day Habit Makeover. And so I actually had it as a mini PDF for an online course that I used to offer. But I'm going to expand on that and then release that. I'll self-publish it later on in the year.
Good. Let me know. We'll talk about it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great.
Good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jackie. Take care.
Okay. Bye.